Hello all, and welcome to the IEEE Humanitarian Technology Webinar series on Fighting Against Counterfeit Drugs with Sproxil. So this is Karthik Kulkarni from the IEEE Humanitarian Activities Ad Hoc Committee, and on behalf of our committee and the whole of the IEEE Humanitarian Technology Webinar team led by Adrian Pais, I welcome you all. So, as always, IEEE Humanitarian Technology Webinar series are freely and publicly available webinar series. So you could log into the humanitarian.ieee-elearning.org and you would find all these webinars recorded free of cost, and they're available publicly. So this is the Humanitarian Technology Webinar Series team led by Adrian Pais, and here's the composition. So a few quick instructions before we actually begin the webinar. You would have right now entered your name and location, and then logged into the system. So if you have a question in between, so there is a Q&A chat window on your left-hand side. So you can just write your name and then enter the question. So the presenter would choose to answer some of the questions right away during the session, or he could answer after the webinar. So after the webinar, you can receive a personalized certificate of completion on humanitarian.ieee-elearning.org. Please return to that URL after you complete this webinar. So the next webinar, just a quick look, is in December, the month of December, by AIDG, Appropriate Infrastructure Development Group. So we welcome you all to participate in this webinar as well. All right, so for some of you who are not IEEE members, we highly encourage you to be a member of IEEE. IEEE webinar series is just one out of multitude of benefits that IEEE provides for its members. So you could log on to IEEE.org to find out more on IEEE benefits and how to join IEEE. All right, so coming back to today's webinar on fighting against counterfeit drugs with Sproxil, we have Melissa Mitra from Sproxil, who serves as the Global Business Coordinator. Sproxil is a US-based company that provides brand protection solutions in the emerging markets by mainly using mobile phones, softwares, and services. So Sproxil is currently operating in around 3 continents, including Asia and Africa. And Melissa is responsible for the global marketing efforts, sales, and service supports. So I would now like to hand in to Melissa, so that she can enlighten us with, her initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Good morning. Thank you to the symposium organizers for giving me the opportunity to speak today. Like IEEE, Sproxil believes in using technology to benefit society, so we're excited to be a part of this webinar. It's a great pleasure to be here and to share with you information on the problem of counterfeit drugs and the work Sproxil is doing to fight it. I also want to leave some time open at the end of the session for questions so that we can make this more interactive. Counterfeit drugs present a serious threat to the health of patients. According to the International Policy Network, each year there are over 700,000 deaths worldwide due to counterfeit malaria and tuberculosis deaths alone. That's over 700,000 avoidable deaths, or the equivalent of 4 jumbo jets of people dying per day. And that's only from 2 different types of drugs, let alone all the other drugs that are heavily counterfeited. I will begin my talk today going over the problem of counterfeit medicines. I will then speak to you about Sproxil and the exciting work that we do. And after, I will open it up to Q&A. Let's begin. What is a counterfeit product? Now, there has been a lot of controversy on the correct definition of a counterfeit product. But for the purpose of this presentation, we will stick to this definition. Before I go over that, what do I mean by medical product? According to the Medicrime Convention, this includes all accessories used for medical devices, active and inactive substances, and all parts and materials used to produce legitimate medical products. Although we'll be focusing more on drugs, it's good to keep this description in mind. So, what is a counterfeit medical product? According to the Council of Europe, a counterfeit product is a product whose identity, nature, and/or source are fraudulently misrepresented. This does include the product itself, the product packaging, and the label. This definition for a counterfeit product extends to counterfeit drugs. Counterfeit medicines range from a random mixture of harmful toxic substances to inactive, ineffective preparations. Some actually contain the declared active ingredient, but not enough of it, or too much. For counterfeit medicines generally, the source of the medicine is unknown and the content unreliable. For example, if products were relabeled at double strength at, say, 100 milligrams, but the actual price is only 10 milligrams strength, it's considered counterfeit. It has been purposely mislabeled and is misleading to the consumer. Even worse, if the medication was made in unsanitary conditions or with ingredients different from what was said on the label, it's potentially harmful and dangerous. The counterfeit drug problem. According to the World Health Organization, the counterfeit medicine industry is estimated at a whopping $75 billion. Some sources have even cited that 10% of drugs on the market globally are counterfeit. Let's quickly address that. Getting really accurate statistics is difficult because we can only rely on reports from regulatory authorities, enforcement agencies, and pharmaceutical companies. Many studies only give you insight into immediate situations. And this is because counterfeiters are extremely flexible in the way they move with the market and prevent the detection, and because it is difficult to track all instances of counterfeiting globally, especially in developing nations for long periods of time. However, that should not belittle this multi-billion-dollar industry simply because we can't substantiate the numbers. Despite differing statistics, it comes down to the fact that counterfeiting medicines is a huge, harmful multi-billion-dollar problem, and it is taking lives. So I think that a more accurate depiction of this widely used statistic comes from the World Health Organization, whose estimates range from about 1% of sales in developing countries to over 10% in developed countries to over 10% in developing countries, depending on the geographical area. Counterfeiting is also more commonly seen in developing countries than in developed worlds. Although we can't pretend that counterfeiting does not exist in developed worlds, as you will see. So, as you can already tell, counterfeits are a worldwide problem. They don't exist solely in developing countries, as I said, but in industrial areas as well. Here are some real headlines from online publications regarding the counterfeit problem. Counterfeit pills infiltrated over-the-counter nutritional supplement market. So 2 lots of nutritional supplement have been voluntarily recalled due to products containing undeclared drug ingredients, namely 2 ED pills and an appetite suppressant. Counterfeit heparin blamed for worldwide deaths. This happened in 2008. Heparin is an anticoagulant used to treat blood clots in the veins, arteries, and lungs, and was found to be contaminated. It was linked to the death of 81 people and resulted in hundreds of allergic reactions in the U.S. The batches of contaminated heparin were also detected in 11 countries, resulting in as many as 68 more deaths. These ingredients actually had come from China, according to the article. Counterfeiters target countries with weak laws, says Antigua Pharma Society. And the last one is fake weapon parts ticking time bomb. This is an article about sprinkling, which sounds harmless, but it's actually a process of mixing authentic electronic parts with fake ones, so that the counterfeits will not be detected when companies test them for multi-million-dollar missile systems, helicopters, and aircraft. And I don't know about you, but this is extremely unsettling to hear that the ongoing investigation of about 1,800 cases of suspect counterfeit electronics is being sold to the Pentagon from China. To emphasize my point that counterfeiting is not necessarily a developing world problem, but also an industrial world problem, I would like to cite this article from February 2011. An American pleads guilty to smuggling misbranded medicine. Out here in New England, a man pleaded guilty for smuggling ED drugs from China, falsely labeled as an herbal dietary supplement, such as cinnamon extract, ginseng extract, and multivitamins. It goes to show that we're not immune to counterfeiting problems, so we must always be aware of where we purchase our products. And lastly, I would just like to show this recent FDA alert that I found interesting and relevant, as we are actively making strides to rid of fake and mislabeled drugs in the market. A voluntary recall nationwide of a Virility Max dietary supplement was announced because the active ingredient, an analog of an active ingredient in ED drugs, was not listed on the product label, but still contained in the product. So that's pretty dangerous. Okay, online pharmacies. Many times, developing countries do not have the luxury that we in the U.S. do of having a pharmacy like CVS or Walgreens that we trust. Drugs are easily purchased on the streets from carts or makeshift pharmacies because that is what is available. But just because we don't have to necessarily worry about that doesn't mean we shouldn't be aware of another source of counterfeiting, which is online pharmacies. For counterfeiters, the internet is a vast land of opportunity to profit from consumers drawn to the privacy and convenience of online retail. Unfortunately, it means that one should never trust the origin of their products unless it has been verified by accredited sources. But using only trusted vendors may prove difficult due to the popularity of e-commerce, where one can buy or sell from anyone. Online pharmacies are meant to be extremely convenient and private way to purchase and receive medications at affordable prices. People who stand to benefit from this are the elderly or persons in remote areas who would otherwise have to travel to get their medications. But as we have seen in the $500 million Google settlement for allowing rogue pharma ads to be placed on their website, not all online pharmacies are legitimate. In fact, there are a ton of online pharmacies that are rogue, which means dishonest. But I would like to discuss them briefly to give you a better idea of how easily people, even those in industrial markets, can fall victim to counterfeits. Rogue pharmacies can be a front for stealing, where you pay but you don't receive anything, identity theft, where they take your credit card and other personal details, or even extortion, where scammers pose as officials of the FDA to accuse victims of buying illegally and demand they pay a fine. The FDA has released a statement saying they don't do that. So that's definitely something to keep in mind, but it does scare people into paying the fake FDA members. And for those rogue pharmacies that actually do supply products, they tend to be counterfeit and potentially dangerous. For example, in one FDA study, pills originating in India were supposed to be containing the anti-flu drug Tamiflu, but were actually found to be made of talcum powder and acetaminophen. Other times, pharmacies operating in other countries sell to consumers in countries where the specific drugs do not actually meet the FDA standards and are thus technically illegal. That's not to say that all online pharmacies are bad. Online pharmacies are legal, and there are legitimate pharmacies out there. However, one must exercise caution when going with an online pharmacy. And as you can see here, I have quoted a few online pharmacy bits that I found. We do not require a prescription or any medical questionnaires to be filled out, and all orders are shipped right to your door. That's a little sketchy. Wish to get free sample pills? It's easy. Placing an order for 60 or more pills of generic ED medication and generic Propecia, you'll get 4 Viagra pills or 2 Cialis, and Cialis is misspelled, pills as a free bonus to your order. The last one is, this is my favorite, there are no taxes to be paid as the product comes into the country unregistered. The manufacturer is located in an offshore zone and the product costs are way lower. No child labor is used. Avoiding online pharmacy scams. There are plenty of ways to spot online pharmacy scams, and I have only listed a few of them. But first and foremost, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So let's go down the list. Offer prescription medicines without requiring a prescription. Prescription drugs are pretty self-explanatory. It's a drug that requires a prescription. If the pharmacy doesn't ask for a prescription, it's probably fake. No verifiable address or phone number. If you can't verify the source with an address or legitimate number, it's probably counterfeit. The World Health Organization says that half of drugs supplied through sites that don't give their addresses are counterfeit. You wouldn't just take one of two pills knowing that one may be fake, so why would you do that with your pharmacies? The pharmacy ships to all 50 states, and they tell you they ship worldwide. If a pharmacy ships to all 50 states and they tell you they ship worldwide, they probably illegally divert drugs, which means you should also know the country source that your drugs are coming from. Different countries have different standards for drugs, so there are times when you can't make purchases and have drugs imported if they are not approved by your home country. Getting a phone call from someone offering medications. Pharmacies and retailers are not going to call you to offer you medications, so that is probably a scam. It actually really is a scam. It's not probably. So here's a tip. Actually, sorry, I missed one. Getting bonus medications. This doesn't happen at physical pharmacies, so this shouldn't happen online. It seems fishy when pharmacies are willing to just give away drugs. It's not candy, so it shouldn't be treated like it. The next one is more of a tip. This should be taken into consideration when you make online purchases for drugs and just in general. Use a one-time disposable credit card number for your purchases. But, if you don't fully trust the source, you probably shouldn't go for it. Discuss online prescription plans with your physician. This is important. Physicians are more aware of rogue online pharmacies and can help you find legitimate sources for getting your drugs conveniently and legally. And the last, but one of the most important resources that you should utilize is the NABP website. That's the National Association of Boards of Pharmacists. That's nabp.net. They publish a list of pharmacies they have actually checked out and accredited through its Verified Internet Pharmacy Practices sites, or their VIPS program. On the other hand, NABP publishes a huge list of hundreds of so-called pharmacies it says it does not recommend. So whenever you are online shopping for pharmacies, you definitely want to go to this website and take a look at their approved pharmacies and their unapproved pharmacies. Now that I've talked briefly about the drug problem, I would like to emphasize work done to counter it. The counterfeit world has definitely seen some fight back from us. I'm sure you've recently heard of the China bust of over 65 million counterfeit pills. For those who have not heard the news, there was a recent incident in the Henan province, which is in central China, concerning $30 million worth of counterfeit pharmaceutical products. And 114 people were arrested as a result of a 4-month-long investigation and drug bust. The investigation sparked from an incident in April in which a woman at a drugstore used fake medicines to replace genuine ones, included searches of 117 counterfeit drug products and sale sites. Large-scale victories for the anti-counterfeiting world are especially gratifying, although it is not to undermine the smaller-scale victories, of course. But it does prove that countries like China are especially vigilant and proactive in fighting counterfeits, both in the physical world and the online world. The Medicrime Convention. The purpose of the Medicrime Convention is to prevent and combat threats to public health by criminalizing certain counterfeit acts, protecting rights of victims of these acts, and promoting cooperation on a national and international level. The scope of this convention concerns all medical products, which I have defined in the beginning of this presentation. All interested parties can participate in this international treaty, which criminalizes the following: the manufacturing of counterfeit medical products, supplying, offering to supply, and trafficking in counterfeit medical products, the falsification of documents, the unauthorized manufacturing or supplying of medicinal products, and the marketing of medical devices that do not comply with conformity requirements. So far, the following parties signed the convention October 26, 2011. Some of the countries were Austria, Cyprus, Finland, France, Israel, Italy, Russia, Ukraine. And although this convention has received criticism because people are questioning how strictly it will be enforced, it is open to all European and non-European nations and does signify the first international treaty against counterfeit products. It is a great example of global efforts to fight this menace. Okay, so now I would like to talk to you about what Sproxil is doing in the anti-counterfeiting industry. To give you a brief background, Sproxil was founded in 2009 and is growing rapidly. We're a private health company based here in New England with multiple patents filed and granted. We've experienced rapid growth over the last few years and now have subsidiaries in Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, and India, and we're actively hiring in all of these locations. I also want to point out that none of our investors are pharmaceuticals, so we don't have any conflicts of interest among our board. Our company is open for any brand owner to use. And this is because, for example, if a pharmaceutical company were to have a stake in Sproxil, they could say that we couldn't work with other competition or they could block us out of certain markets. This ensures that everyone will have equal access and equal opportunity to use our service. Now I'd like to brag a little about our milestones. In Q4 2009, we got an endorsement from NAFDAC, which is the Nigerian FDA, and this was pre-launch. In Q1 of 2010, we had our first commercial launch with Biofam. In Q2 of 2010, we had a post-launch endorsement from NAFDAC for the work that we do in anti-counterfeiting. In Q3 of 2010, we got recognized by the Clinton Global Initiative, who recognizes the work that we do in the developing world. In Q4 of 2010, we got an honorable mention at IBM Global Smart Camp. We won the local Boston round. The IBM Smart Camp is an exclusive event aimed at identifying early-stage entrepreneurs who are developing business ventures that align with their IBM Smarter Planet vision. In Q1 of 2011, we had our GSK launch of Ampiclox, which is an antibiotic used to cure pneumonia-related diseases. In Q2 of 2011, Paul Chang of IBM joined the Sproxil Advisory Board. Paul Chang is responsible for serialization and traceability efforts at IBM. Also in Q2 of 2011, we did a launch of our Indian operations. And in Q3 of 2011, we were endorsed by the Kenya Poison and Pharmacy Board. And additionally, NAFDAC anti-malarial MPA requirement was established, which means that NAFDAC issued a directive that all anti-malarials have mobile product authentication, which Sproxil does, by the end of 2011. So, our specific market challenges. When dealing with counterfeiting in emerging countries, there are several market challenges that we encounter. Distribution chain participants may not be trustworthy. The reality is that many participants in the distribution chain may not be trustworthy. We know that we trust the manufacturer, and we trust that the consumer wants to purchase genuine drugs. But between that, there are several steps where the products may go missing or counterfeits may be added into the supply chain. Unreliable basic infrastructure. And what I mean by this is that we're dealing with the fact that we have an unreliable basic infrastructure where access to power and internet are not consistent. In the U.S., we take it for granted that the lights will turn on when we flip a switch, or the internet will work when we power up our computers. But the reality in emerging countries is that both power and web access can be intermittent and inconsistent. This presents challenges to the implementation of anti-counterfeiting solutions that require web access or electronically powered hardware. This means that web-based or electronically powered solutions are difficult and can be unreliable in these markets. Severely limited financial and human resources. Law enforcement does not have sufficient reach or resources, and counterfeiters are constantly innovating. The manufacturers are doing what they can to stop the counterfeiters, but they have limited financial and human resources to fight the problem. And we'd love for law enforcement to step in and solve the problem, but they too are limited in their reach and resources. On top of this, counterfeiters are consistently innovating. Just when we think that we've closed one gap in the supply chain, they turn around and rip open a new hole. This is a very interesting statistic. Over 60% of pharmacists surveyed in Nigeria have seen fake drugs. But counterfeiting is not limited to pharmaceuticals. You may have heard recently of entire Apple stores being faked in China. Below, we see a picture of one of these fake Apple stores where the giveaway in this case is a misspelling of store, where they spell S-C-O-E-R instead of S-C-O-R-E. Beside it, we see a load of counterfeit goods being confiscated. So, given these challenges, how do we counter the introduction of fake drugs? This is where we introduce Sproxil's solution. Enter consumer-facing authentication. Who are our greatest supply chain allies in high-risk region? Who has the strongest interest in achieving serialization goals? Of course, it is the legitimate manufacturer and the consumer. The manufacturer wants to sell their legitimate products and not stain their brand, and the consumer wants to purchase real drugs. However, in between, there may be risk for diversion or counterfeiting in the supply chain. So as you can see, there's a check mark and question mark for retailers. For legitimate retailers, they do want to sell genuine brands as their store is on the line. However, if they unknowingly receive counterfeit drugs, then how can we trust that? Also, counterfeiters can pose as pharmacists to sell drugs. So that's tough. So the brand owner, the consumer, and legitimate retailers stand to benefit having authentic drugs and lose when counterfeiters enter the market. Additionally, it's important to note that this is also free for the consumer. So in the instance that someone is not carrying a phone when they buy a drug, we want to ensure that it's easy for them to ask to borrow a friend's phone or to ask to borrow the pharmacist's phone to send the free text message. This is paid for completely by pharmaceuticals who offer this service as a way to protect their customers, maintain their brand protection, and recover market share from the counterfeit. The consumer can scratch and text codes to the cloud. Sproxil also offers multiple options for various supply chain levels. Here we have a close-up sample of a Sproxil label. In this example, in addition to the 12-digit overt PIN intended for use by the consumer, we also have a 2D barcode that can be used for track and trace. There are also several other security features that we can add to the labels, such as ink tangents, depending on the unique needs of each customer. You'll also see that there's a phone number on every label. Should the consumer have any questions or problems in the authentication process, they can call a customer support desk associate who's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and provides local language support. Should someone ask me to send a text message, I would have no problem. But if you would ask my mother or my grandmother to do the same thing, they might get confused. This is why we offer the customer support desk as an alternative for those who are less technologically savvy or those who prefer to speak to a person. Here's an example of the rapid text message response with a genuine message. In this case, it's on a BlackBerry phone, but it does work with any SMS-capable phone. And as you can see, we have call center numbers that folks can call in to assist them with the verification process. Sometimes people rather call than text, and we understand that. Other times, it may be that the consumer has received a fake message and would like to escalate it by contacting the correct authorities, in which case, the call center number facilitates that. You'll notice in the banner that the text is sent to a short code, and in this case, 38353. The reason we go with a short code is because you need permission from the government to get the code, so it's a very regulated market. You don't expect a counterfeiter to register with the government to get this one. This adds security and value to the customer. There are several other anti-counterfeiting solutions in the market, so let's take a minute to compare them to Sproxil. First off, we'll start with chemicals. They can be very expensive, and the consumer doesn't have the capability to verify authenticity him or herself. RFIDs can be very effective, but they are expensive and require special readers, which can be cost prohibitive in emerging markets, particularly when the selling price of each drug is sometimes lower than the cost of the RFID itself. Here in the U.S., we often buy drugs for 30, 60, or even 90-day supplies. But we have to remember that in emerging markets, consumers tend to buy a single dose or a single bliss at a time, so the cost per unit of sale is much lower. Next, we have barcodes. Barcodes require smartphones, which many consumers in emerging markets don't have. On top of that, these barcodes can be easily counterfeited. We also have holograms, which we have seen can be easily counterfeited. We've even heard of some counterfeiters putting holograms onto fake drugs where the genuine drug doesn't even have a hologram. But this can fool the consumer who doesn't know whether or not it should be there. For Sproxil, it's consumer capable, it's a lower cost, there's no special equipment needed, all you need is a cell phone, and the solution is robust and well tested. So far, we've talked about the beginning and end of the supply chain with the manufacturer and the consumer. But our solution can also be used to secure the entire supply chain through track and trace technology. We call this cascading authentication. As a product cascades down the supply chain from the distributor to the consumer, it can be verified using various methods. At the consumer level, authentication is done on primary packaging, such as a blister or a bottle. On the pharmacist level, wholesaler level, and distributor level, it can be done on secondary and tertiary packaging. And as you can see at the bottom, there are multiple methods in which verification can occur, online or by phone, via 2D barcode or overt code or the call center. Sproxil's mobile product authentication, or MPA technology, can help solve illegal diversion. That's where it's sold in a different country or market than it's intended for. For example, if we take a product in Germany that is destined for India and Kenya, the manufacturer doesn't necessarily want to see these products ending up in South Africa or the Caribbean. Through our labels, we can identify which country the product is intended for. If it ends up in a different country, we can flag it and notify the manufacturer. Because they know they're distributors, they will be able to know who's redirecting without authorization. Product dilution can be mislabeling products to sell more than it's worth. So it may be genuine, but it's mislabeled. As you recall from our definition of counterfeit products, mislabeling a product is considered counterfeiting. Product theft and recall, meaning we can track in the supply chain if a product has been stolen or potentially compromised. Fraud. If someone takes the pins and labels and tries to emulate our solution to pass it off as a genuine product secured by a technology. That has yet to happen. Counterfeiting and parallel imports, which is bringing it in from another source. In some countries, this is legal, but due to patent reasons, some medications may not be fit for the standards of certain countries. And all in all, this saves money, strengthens the brand, and increases sales. As you can see here, we already had several world-class customers, such as GSK, J&J, and a subsidiary of Merck Serono. Sproxil works with manufacturers and distributors alike, protecting both patented and generic drugs. So why Sproxil? Sproxil has the most direct experience in SMS consumer pharma verification. All clients with more than 3 months tenure with us have experienced over 10% increase in sales. Operations are established in several countries, and we provide superior support and robust data analytics for market intelligence. All technical development work is done in the U.S. by full-time employees, which means we're always monitoring our system. We also have other value-added or VAS services available. Investigative services are now offered, such as undercover work and seizures in cooperation with the law enforcement as appropriate, and launching opt-in consumer SMS messaging campaigns targeted at specific consumer demographics. Everyone benefits when the client succeeds. Consumers win because they can trust that the product is genuine. Manufacturers win because they can protect their patients, avoid brand damage, and regain market share. And authorities win because they're helping to safeguard the health of a nation. They can reduce health insurance costs and reimbursement fraud, and at no cost to themselves. In collaboration with brand owners, they can conduct seizures and raids to help reduce counterfeit incidents in the market. And of course, counterfeiters lose because they lose profit from losing customers. As I mentioned earlier, customers have the option to call a customer support desk if they have questions or problems during the authentication process. And this information has proved invaluable to brand owners. This call center supports for major languages in each market and in local time zones. It even facilitates live transfer to the brand owner's hotline for suspicious products or escalations of suspicious products. We do support for major languages in each market and support for local time zones. Currently, the support desk runs 24/7 and offers English, Pidgin English, and Hausa. So what have we learned from our customer support desk? How have we benefited from it? The benefit. Gain insight to location of potentially counterfeit medicines. The impact. Enable brand owners to act quickly to protect their consumers. When people are suspicious about a product being potentially counterfeit or substandard, they call the call center. They provide details such as where the item was purchased, and this allows the brand owner to respond quickly. Rather than casting a wide net in hopes of finding counterfeits, brand owners can respond quickly and in a targeted manner. But it's important to note that counterfeiters do not sit idly by. In 2010, through the call center, we identified that a store owner was packaging one genuine labeled product with a non-labeled product and putting them together in one box. He tried to tell his customers that this is the way Sproxil is now using its labels, but the consumers were too smart. They smelled something fishy and called the call center to ask for verification. This was escalated on our end, and the brand owner was able to put an end to this behavior quickly. Additionally, earlier this year, we learned, again through the call center, that some people were trying to convince customers that the brand owners had stopped using Sproxil, so there was no need for a sticker. Suspicious, the patient called the customer support desk to clarify and learned that he was being lied to by the store. Again, the brand owner was able to identify the exact location of suspicious behavior and take targeted action. The benefit. Allow patients to ask important medical questions. The impact. Enable brand owners to retrain or reinforce the benefits of certain medications. We've seen callers tend to ask similar medical questions. This gives insight to the brand owner. Is the brand owner not being clear enough in instructions for use? Do they need to work more closely with medical professionals to explain products use? So this gives great insight for the brand owner to improve their product and their marketing. Next, the benefit. Know where customers are making their purchases. The impact. Understand market penetration and adjust marketing campaigns. From the call center, we also learn where customers are making their purchases. In the U.S., this may not seem very unique, but in emerging countries, there is generally no data captured at point of sale. This helps brand owners understand market penetration and adjust marketing campaigns. The benefit. Locate substandard products that got past internal quality assurance. The impact. Identify quality issues and take action. And you're able to modify SMS responses for specific products. Moving forward, we know that the counterfeiters will keep trying, whether it be by faking labels or short codes. But we've prepared for this, and we were working closely with regulatory agencies, genuine manufacturers, and consumers to keep resolving issues as they pop up. Lastly, the benefit. Ability to notify brand owners of adverse reactions. The impact. Take action quickly to protect patients. The call center does have a protocol to track adverse reactions, and this is dependent on how the client chooses to approach these situations. We believe that there is great strength in partnerships for success. To that end, Sproxil works closely with different stakeholder groups such as NASDAQ, the Nigerian equivalent of the FDA, with professional associations, and with NGOs to ensure proper collaboration. It's important for people to know the dangers of counterfeit medicines and to fight against it because we are affected by it. In summary, the issue is brand protection, and Sproxil provides a fast, simple, secure solution. The benefits to the customers are avoiding negative health outcomes, and the service is free to the consumer. The benefits to the manufacturer are reduced counterfeiting and increased market share, increased brand awareness, and have the ability to connect to their consumers. To give you a sense of our progress to date, we have served over 500,000 unique mobile numbers. We receive thousands of SMS messages per day, and there are currently 11 SKUs in the market, but we have several more in the pipeline. As I mentioned earlier, we also have operations in Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, and India, and Tanzania. Lastly, I would like to mention that our work has been recognized by world-renowned organizations such as USAID and the Wall Street Journal. To the right, we have a picture of President Bill Clinton congratulating our CEO, Dr. Shifi Gogo, for the great work that Sproxil is doing. Thank you for listening to my spiel about counterfeit drugs and Sproxil's work. It is my hope that you come out here with greater knowledge of efforts made to reduce the counterfeiting problem around the world. We are greatly pleased to contribute to humanitarian efforts and help get the word out for the need for everyone to be vigilant against counterfeiting. I would like to open up the floor for questions now.
This is Steve Welch from IEEE. I'm just going to step in for a moment and ask folks to type your questions in the chat window at the bottom left. I think our moderator, Kartik, might be having some technical issues, so I hope I'm not stepping on any toes going in and talking. But if you have any questions, please type them into the chat window. And we definitely want to thank our presenter and about a very fascinating topic. So let's open it up for any questions. Do we have any from the floor? Please type them in. While we wait for people to type in questions, I will mention that a recording of this webinar will be available on the Humanitarian Technology webinar site, either maybe as early as later today, but certainly this week. For those of you who would like to receive professional development hours for this presentation, you can get that back at the Humanitarian Technology webinar site. There will be an email that goes out to all participants at the end of the session with a direct link to that. But seeing no questions right now, you can also follow up on the website with direct questions. But if there are none right now, I'm going to thank Meliza for her presentation and her participation. Oh, and I see maybe Kartik is back online and working. Any closing comments from you, sir?
Yeah, thanks, Steve, and thanks, Meliza. It was quite fascinating topic. So what I have to say is that, although we had few participants in this webinar, I'm sure that the recorded and hosted webinar on the website will definitely be a great resource for multiple people who visit the website. So the last remark is that keep participating in these webinars, and it's very interesting to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Meliza, do you see the question from Hazrat? He points out that mobile phones are not common with everyone, so what can the solution be in that case?
Mobile phones are very common in emerging markets, but people do have the option of calling. That's why we provide the call center. And with that said, if someone doesn't have a mobile phone, they can always ask a friend or ask the pharmacist, who are very open and willing to lend their phone for this verification process. Did that answer your question? No problem.
All right, so seeing no other questions right now, I want to thank everyone for their participation. Again, look for an email with links to the recording, as well as the ability to get your certificate for participating. And we thank Meliza again for her participation.
Thank you, Steve.